Adam, I thought you were supposed to be at CAC this morning, so as it got past 8, I was making jokes that I couldn't believe you were late, and it wasn't you.
Yeah, Sam, did we have a CAC before this week too? Wasn't that Aaron?
It was, yeah. I lost track. I was just thinking of you all the time.
I know, a lot of people do that.
Aaron is busted. He was apparently late for CAC this morning.
I was not. I was exactly on time, but somebody didn't let me in for a minute.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is 7 of us, so we're waiting on Mary. Mary said she might be late today, correct? So Mary might be late.
Yes, sir. About 30 minutes. Yes, sir. About 30 minutes.
We still missing?
We have Junie. She just doesn't have her camera on.
Junie, that's it. Okay, that's what I was looking for. All right. So I think we're ready to go if Channel 8 is ready.
Channel 8 is good to go.
All right.
And I will record. Here we go.
Okay. Very good. Give me just 1 second. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday, June 1st regular meeting of the Boulder City Council. We will start with a few announcements to kick us off. First, COVID-19 vaccinations. They're widely available, and you can find out information about how to get a vaccine, how to sign up for one, or where to walk in at bouldercounty.org /families/disease/COVID-19/vaccines. You can see that on the screen. And then the second announcement is boards and commissions. You still have time to apply to serve on one of the city's boards or commissions, and we would love to have you join us in helping manage the city. We're continuing to accept applications for the following boards: Boulder Junction Access District Parking and Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management, and for the Beverage Licensing Authority. If you're interested in applying, please visit the webpage at bouldercolorado.gov/boards-commissions. And with that, Alicia, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. And good evening, everyone. Councilmember Brockett.
Mute button wasn't handy. Present.
Friend.
Here.
Joseph.
Hi.
Nagel.
Here.
Swetnick.
Present.
Wallach.
Present.
Weaver.
Here.
Yates.
Here.
And Mary is not here.
Hi,
Mary, we
Mary.
have a quorum. Oh, she made it. Okay. I was expecting you to be late. My apologies. And Young.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Excellent. It's good to have us all here. Next, I will need a motion to amend the agenda, please. We'd like to add item 8A. It's a discussion on scheduling, including a potential scheduling conflict with the Major League All-Star Game, as well as a few other items to cover. So could I get a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have motion and a second. Any objections to amending the agenda? Great, seeing none, we will move on. Next, we will move to declarations. Our first declaration will be the National Gun Violence Awareness Day declaration presented by Councilmember Friend.
Thank you, Sam. And it is always an honor to present this. It's my second year reading the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And obviously this year in Boulder, it is hits home a little harder than usual. So June 4th, 2021 is National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Every day, more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence. And on average, there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year. Additionally, more than 230 people per day are shot, 230 people per day are shot and wounded, primarily people of color, and a third of them under the age of 24. Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries, and cities across the nation are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions. Protecting public safety in the communities they serve is Council's highest responsibility. Support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding people goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from those with dangerous and violent histories. Council and law enforcement officers know their communities are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are well positioned to understand how to keep their community's members safe. Gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after more than a year of increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in city gun violence. In January 2013, Hadiya Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. On June 4th, 2021, to recognize what would have been her 24th birthday, people across the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadiya Pendleton, other victims of gun violence, and the loved ones of those victims. This idea was inspired by a group of Hadiya's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. On March 22nd, 2021, a mass shooting at a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado resulted in the death of 9 community members and 1 brave law enforcement officer. The tragic event, those who were lost, and the pain of their deaths will live on in the hearts and minds of our community. Boulder is committed more than ever to being part of the change that prevents the unspeakable pain and suffering that follows these events, to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and to encourage responsible gun ownership to keep our community safe. By wearing orange on June 4th, 2021, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. The City Council of the City of Boulder, Colorado declares the June 4th, 2021 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day and encourages all community members to support local efforts to prevent tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. With that, Sam, I believe we have a member of Moms Demand Action, which is the advocate for Wear Orange Day with us today, Christina Gardner. And I would also just like to take a moment on behalf of City Council to really thank Moms Demand Action and other gun violence prevention groups in the area for being so supportive to our community for quite a while after March 22nd, and for the advocacy that you all do at the local, state, and national level for gun violence prevention. So with that, I will see if Christina is here. Or a sub-member.
Hi, yes, I'm
Hi,
here, Rachel.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for that wonderful proclamation. As Rachel said, my name is Christina Gardner. I'm a South Boulder resident, also a member of the leadership team for the Boulder Group of Moms Demand Action. Thank you so much for issuing this proclamation to recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and for the opportunity for our group to speak tonight. Our local group appreciates the support of council members and has for the past several years. And we also would like to, of course, thank Rachel for her longtime gun violence prevention advocacy and for being a former member of Moms Demand Action, former volunteer. And thank you also to Mayor Sam Weaver for being a member of the Everytown Coalition, Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And the statistics, as Rachel already pointed out, surrounding gun violence in our country are staggering and unacceptable. And in our own state, they have become just a fact of everyday life for those of us here in Colorado. It doesn't have to be that way. And in an average year here, 805 people die by gun violence. So with a rate of 14 per 100,000 people, Colorado has the 21st highest rate of gun deaths in the US. And of course, as Rachel also pointed out, our town of Boulder has now become the site of yet another mass shooting with the tragedy at King Soopers. And as was also mentioned, this makes this Gun Violence Awareness Day very personal and very significant to our local community. Our volunteers and supporters wear orange to demand a future that's free from gun violence. And orange, as was mentioned, symbolizes the value of each person's life. We wear it to honor those who were taken and wounded by gun violence and to call for an end to this crisis. This year for Wear Orange, our group is hosting virtual events, and our virtual event is a Soulbox project. The Soulbox project collects and exhibits thousands of origami type hand-folded boxes to raise awareness for the gun violence epidemic. And each of these soul boxes represents and holds space for one life lost or injured by gun violence, defense, accident, or suicide. And this is an example of one that my daughter just made today, and it was made for Terry, who we knew at King Soopers. And so she filled it with tissue paper and a couple of little jewels and Terry's name, and she chose the paper very specifically. The flowers and the papers were chosen very specifically for Terry. She also made one for one of my friends who was lost in New York City to gun violence as well. They're pretty simple to make. My 10-year-old made them, my 8-year-old made one, and my 6-year-old is making one right now. You can learn more about how to make one. We'd love for everyone on council to make one, everyone who is has been touched by the tragedy at King Soopers to make one. You can go to soulboxproject.org to find out how. There's a really useful video. We'll be collecting these all summer to mail to Washington, D.C., and we would love to have a large representation from Boulder represented. The Soulbox Project will be creating a large exhibit on the National Mall in October and walking all of these soul boxes into the National Mall in mid-October. And we will have representatives from our local Boulder Moms Demand Action group there in person for that. And at the state level, we have 3 gun violence prevention bills expected to pass this week. And so as we continue to mourn the lives taken at the Table Mesa King Soopers, we know that as a community, there's so much more we can do to prevent mass shootings as well as everyday gun violence. And as a member of the Everytown for Gun Safety Survivor Network myself, I would ask that you join in reflection, please, for the survivors of the King Soopers shooting and for those who were killed. And I'd like to just say their names as I close. And thank you again for the opportunity to share the work that our group is doing. Trelona Bartakawiak, Suzanne Fountain, Terry Leiker, Kevin Mahoney, Lynn Murray, Ricky Olds, Nevin Stanisic, Denny Stong, Eric Talley, and Jody Waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Rachel, for the proclamation. Next, we have a proclamation or a declaration for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month. And this declaration will be presented by Bob Yates.
Thanks, Sam. And this is actually the second time today that this proclamation will be read. Earlier today, Junie, on behalf of City Council, read this proclamation to a gathering at the corner of Pearl and Broadway, and a rainbow flag was hoisted up on the flagpole. Some of us are still wearing our rainbow clothes from earlier today. I see Nuria still has her rainbow scarf on, so thanks for showing the spirit. And today is June 1, and happens to be the very beginning of Pride Month, so we thought this was a great time to read our annual Pride Month declaration. So I'll read that, and then I think Marty Moore with Out Boulder is here and can say a few words. More than 50 years ago, patrons and supporters of the Stonewall Inn in New York City resisted police harassment that have become all too common for members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. Out of this resistance, the LGBTQ+ rights movement in America was born. During the LGBTQ Pride Month, we commemorate the events of June 1969 and commit to achieving equal justice under law for LGBTQ Americans. Boulder has a diverse LGBTQ community that includes people of many ethnicities, religions, and professions, and we consider diversity to be a societal asset that enhances and enriches the lives of all community members. LGBTQ Americans have made and continue to make great and lasting contributions to strengthen the fabric of our community. Furthermore, the fight for dignity and equality for LGBTQ+ people is demonstrated in the tireless dedication of advocates and allies who strive to make this a more inclusive society. As we move into a recovery phase from the pandemic, we reflect on the resilience of our community members who came together and contributed to greater safety in this time of need. These individuals led by practicing appropriate distancing and hygiene, by volunteering at testing and vaccine clinics, by donating to charitable causes, and working together to transition events and operations to virtual formats to keep services going and our community connected, all the while absorbing unanticipated needs in our community, including childcare and so many more things. The City of Boulder honors its commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights of the LGBTQ+ community members and stands hand in hand with them in the continued fight for full equality. And so therefore, the City Council of the City of Boulder, Colorado declares June 2021 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Pride Month. And we urge all residents to respect and honor the diversity in our community, to celebrate and continue building a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Marty Moore, who's the Executive Director of Out Boulder County. Marty?
Hi, this is Marty. Councilman Yates, thank you very much. And City Council, thank you for the declaration. We're grateful. Today was a great day, back in person almost, no masks, and we were outside. And Councilmember Yates and Joseph, thank you very much for your participation. And Nuria, it was a total pleasure to meet you, and your words were impactful. So I was thinking about them since you last spoke them. So thank you so much. We're grateful to the City of Boulder. There's been a lot of progress made under y'all's leadership. As Nuria pointed out today, from the all gender bathrooms at the library, the downtown library, to changing the building code, which we haven't even really announced around bathrooms because we went into the pandemic right after the building codes were changed. So there's a lot of work that's been done by you all, and I'm grateful. And I know it takes a lot of time. I'm grateful for all the time that you commit to the City of Boulder in all the areas, including inclusion. We're a stronger community because of your leadership, and we're grateful. I wanted to let you know, based upon Mayor Weaver's comment, we are doing a Pride Clinic in conjunction with El Centro Amistad, BCAP, and Together on Saturday, June 12th. It's J&J vaccine from 9 until 1. And then also there's going to be a Boulder Pride motorcade. So you'll all want to be at that. Starts at noon. Sign up. It's a secret location. I can't announce it. No, I don't know where it's at. So, but if you'll sign up, Juan will let you know where we're starting for the parade on Sunday, June 13th. So I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you especially for all your work during the pandemic. The work of your staff had a direct impact on the health of the LGBTQ community through the special grants that you all sent our way for CARES funding through Elizabeth Crow made a real difference and was a lifeline for a lot of people who were suffering and continue to suffer. But we're grateful for that. And we're grateful for the ongoing support of the City of Boulder's Human Relations Commission with sponsorship for Pride. So on that, I know you have a long night ahead of you. I want to thank you for your time and thank you very much for your work and for honoring the LGBTQ community.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marty, for being here. Much appreciated. Thank you, Bob, for reading that. And with that, we will turn to the third part of the beginning of the meeting, which is our municipal court quarterly update provided by Judge Linda Cook. You're on mute, Linda, sorry. All right, your presentation is up.
Let me see if I can help, Linda.
Okay, Linda, you're unmuted.
Oh, but we still can't hear
We
you.
still can't hear you.
Is your sound perhaps hooked to a headset? On your settings, next to your mute button, there is a drop-up arrow that might show different options for your microphones. Oh, and now you're frozen.
Well, we are waiting to see if Judge Cook is able to fix her technical difficulties. Oh, I see she's unmuted. Linda, can you try and speak? No, still can't hear you. Judge Khan, would you be able to give the presentation?
I'm happy to give it a shot. I don't have Linda's notes, but I have looked over the presentation a couple of times this afternoon to look at it. And perhaps if Linda wants to check back in, she can join us. If I recall correctly from her notes, council was interested in getting some data from Judge Cook and from the court regarding disparities that might exist across racial backgrounds of our individuals that come to court. And so she went about kind of breaking it down. And what she's got here is, I think she's going to join from her office, she's indicated, but what she went about doing was gathering information and really focused on traffic cases. And the primary reason for that is there really is not a good set of data to work with respect to fines, although I think she will speak to this at the end of the presentation, but not a great deal of data on fines that you can position with respect to race and things of that nature. So what you will be seeing here in these slides are the numbers with respect to the various racial breakouts. My role today would have been to discuss some of the anecdotal issues that we face, and perhaps I can start with that. And if people have additional questions, when you see the slides, there really isn't a significant disparity between at least the fines that are imposed. There certainly is some disparity in the number of people who are of color who receive citations. And if you'll recall the way the municipal court works, we receive citations from two different entities. We receive them from the Boulder Police Department and from CU Boulder Police Department. And so what Linda did was gather the information for the citations, but they issue tickets. So when you first are looking at the racial issues from that perspective, you're looking at percentages of people that are within the city of Boulder, perhaps white, black, Asians, Hispanics, and I believe Indian. She also broke it down into Indian. And what you would find is there is a discrepancy in the number of citations that are issued. Whites and blacks are actually overrepresented in those citations, blacks to a higher degree than white people. And so that's certainly something I think that was brought to the attention of the police department on prior occasions, and we won't spend a great deal of time talking about that. But that's area one, which is to discuss how are citations being issued. And of course, the court doesn't have much control over that. The next step in the process is when tickets come to court, then we have individuals who often will actually pay their tickets. Most people are offered an opportunity to pay without coming to court on traffic cases. So many of them will accept a plea bargain. For example, if they had a 4-point speeding ticket, they could call the court or mail the court or go online even and pay a reduced fine and have the points reduced from 4 points to 2 points. That fine is set, and so that fine doesn't really vary across any of the racial areas that we might have. then there are some who do choose to come to court, and it's actually a smaller percentage of those tickets that are issued of people who come to court. And when they come to court, they're offered plea bargains. A lot of people will take the standard plea bargain offer that's made by the prosecutor's office, and actually when they come to speak with me, they will be told about their plea bargain. The prosecutors allow us to tell them what the plea bargain offer is, and they may accept that without even speaking to a prosecutor. So even a subset of those who come to court are actually accepting plea bargains that are standard plea bargain offers. A small percentage will accept non-standard plea bargain offers. Judge Cook, if you're there, perhaps if we can hear you, maybe you can take over from here.
Okay. Can you tell me which slide you're on?
I didn't move down slides. I was just giving some background on what you had done so far and my role in court so that we could expedite the process a bit.
Perfectly. So I just want to start out, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I was in the courtroom and we have a different sound system in there. So obviously it wasn't compatible with tonight's meeting. If we can go to slide 2, the 2 topics that I'll be presenting on tonight are Councilmember Young asked me to present court data on race and ethnicity. So that's the primary focus. I do want to emphasize that this data is extracted from the municipal court's records management system. It is not intended to be reflective of broad practices across the enforcement agencies. They issue citations into state and county court as well as the municipal court. So this is not the full body of that data. Also, it has not been subjected to any type of academic scrutiny. Next slide, please. Here's some notes about the terms that I'm using and the limitations that we have. So the terms are based on what is printed on the citation and is not necessarily what I would use in a different context, but it's just easier to reflect what's on the citations. There are some limitations in terms of what our court database records management system collects. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to focus largely on traffic cases. As Judge Khan was discussing, there's a lot that goes on with these cases, and it's a really big data set, so it's probably the best data set for this kind of evaluation. It covers the last 3 years. And if you have questions that are sort of you want to ask about anecdotal experience, those are probably best directed at Judge Khan, because he presides over most of these dockets. Next slide, please. Just a reminder about traffic case flow. There are 3 different parts of the criminal justice system that are involved in addressing these cases. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk first about the citations. These are issued from the enforcement agencies, and in particular for traffic citations, they are issued by the Boulder Police Department and the CU Police Department. Next slide, please. So here's the graph that breaks down all of the traffic citations issued for each of the last 3 years by race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. So because a significant number of traffic citations are issued to people who don't reside in Boulder, it's really difficult to see if there's any overrepresentation of any race or ethnic group when you look at the entire data set. So to try to understand any potential disparities, I used a subset of all the traffic citations issued over the last 3 years that consists only of the people who have Boulder addresses. You should not extrapolate this data across all of the traffic citations issued because the results of this subset might not be the same for the entire subset. But if you take that subset of tickets issued to people who are City of Boulder residents and you compare it across the City of Boulder population breakdown, you can see that whites and blacks are overrepresented compared to their population in the city, and that blacks are overrepresented to a greater degree than whites. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to turn now to the next phase of the criminal justice system when it comes to traffic cases. This is the plea bargaining phase. So as Judge Kahn was mentioning when I popped back in, there are some standard plea offers that are made by the prosecutors that the judges are empowered to offer to people who appear in court or for people who are issued citations. The points are relevant. You can see that there are point reductions that are offered. The points are relevant because if you accumulate too many points, your driver's license is suspended. So that is often the main concern for people coming to court. And it's standard practice in all municipal and county courts across the state to offer plea bargain that have point reductions. The vast majority of traffic violators in our court take one of those two standard plea bargain offers. Next slide, please. So to try to understand if there are race or ethnic disparities in plea bargaining practices, what I did was I looked at the very small subset of cases that resulted in non-standard plea offers. So out of the 17,000 plus cases filed over the last 3 years, there were 337 cases where the plea bargain offer deviated from one of those two standard offers. So only about 2% of the total cases. Non-standard plea bargains are almost always better than the standard offer. So as an example, somebody might be offered the chance to have their 4-point violation reduced down to 0 points. So the graph on the left shows the percent of individuals by race and ethnicity who received a non-standard plea. The graph on the right shows, for the sake of comparison, the break of race and ethnicity across all traffic citations issued in that same time frame. So what you look when you see that is that the Asian subset is somewhat overrepresented in the non-standard plea bargain group, while Hispanics are somewhat underrepresented. But again, please keep in mind that this is a very small data set of 337 cases. Next slide, please. So finally, I'm going to talk about the phase of traffic cases that is left to the judge, which is the imposition of penalties. Again, the vast majority of cases, the offender pays the pre-authorized fine amount written on the citation by the officer and gets that standard 2-point reduction. For the smaller percentage of offenders who come to court, the judge decides on fine amounts and traffic school. And those fine amounts are based on a whole number of factors, but they include, for instance, the offender's driving record, the facts of the case, their ability to pay, and so forth. Next slide, please. So this table is a little bit busy, but let me just try to walk you through it. For the 3 to 4 point violations, which are noted on the right, the pre-authorized fine amount is $125, except for non-injury accidents. And in those cases, we add a designated surcharge onto the standard amount. For school and construction zone tickets, the law requires us to double the fine amounts, so the pre-authorized fine amount is $250. And that's why you'll see that the average for these tickets does skew slightly higher than the median. If you look on the left, the 0 to 2 point violations, the pre-authorized fine amount is $100, again, except for non-injury accidents when a surcharge is added. Because a higher percentage of these violations are issued when there's an accident, that's probably why the average and the median skew higher than the standard pre-authorized fine amount. So an example might be a ticket issued for improper backing. That's a 2-point violation. Usually there's a minor accident where somebody is backed into another car or an object. The average and median fine amounts is pretty close across all demographic groups. The one situation that did jump out at me is the average and median fines for Asians with 0 to 2 point violations. And Judge Kahn may have a better sense of why that might be. One possible explanation is that there may be fewer accidents for this demographic group, but that would be speculation on my part. Next slide, please. All right, it would take a huge amount of effort to produce fine data for the fines imposed in all cases where a judge is setting the fine rather than the standard fine being assessed. We can certainly do that deep dive if that's a request of the council, but it was relatively easy to do it for that small subset of people who received a non-standard plea bargain, that 337 or 2% of the people. So here's the data imposed about the fines imposed in those cases. So, you know, again, average, median, and range. And the N indicates the number of people in each of those groups. So again, very small. I would encourage you not to extrapolate anything from that. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to talk now very briefly about general offenses. The situation with general offenses, though, is that there are really no standard plea bargains, and most people are not paying a pre-authorized fine amount. So the analysis is much higher level for these cases. Next slide, please. So these are the percentage of citations issued by the various enforcement agencies for each of the last 3 years to different race and ethnic groups. And just so you know, there's a broader group of enforcement agencies that issues these citations. In addition to the Boulder Police Department and the CU Police Department, the Open Space and Mountain Parks Rangers issued quite a few citations, as do some of our other enforcement agencies, such as Code Enforcement and Animal Protection, which is part of the Police Department. Next slide, please. So this chart depicts the citations issued to the subset of people experiencing homelessness. Extracting that data is imperfect. It is based on the charge that was cited, like, for instance, camping. So this method is inevitably going to include some violations that are committed by people who are not experiencing homelessness, and it will also exclude some charges that are mostly committed by people not experiencing homelessness. So for instance, if a young adult experiencing homelessness is cited for minor in possession, that's not going to be reflected in this data. The left pie chart shows the distribution of citations to the unhoused across race and ethnic groups. And on the right is a table that shows this data compared to the Boulder County point in time data for 2019. You can see that there are some limitations to this analysis because the way the court collects data is different from the way the point in time survey does. But nevertheless, you can see that whites and blacks are overrepresented in comparison to their distribution in the unhoused population, while the opposite is true for Indians or Native Americans and Asians. Next slide, please. And the final subgroup I studied was the data for young adults based on general offenses committed by people aged 18 to 25. A very high percentage of these violations are for minors who possessed or consumed alcohol or marijuana. So I don't want you to think that these are all noise and nuisance party violations. Certainly those are encompassed in this group, but we get a very high percentage of cases for those two violations, minors in possession of alcohol and marijuana. Obviously, not all violators are CU students, but since many of them are, I thought it might be helpful to look at our data compared against the demographics of CU students. And as you can see, citations issued to white and black offenders exceed their representation in the CU student body, while the reverse is true for Hispanic and Asian violators. Next slide, please. All right, so before I move on to a community court update, I thought I'd pause here and see if any of the council members had questions about this data.
Thank you, Judge Cook and Judge Kahn. Council members, any questions for Mary?
Thank you, Judge Cook and Judge Kahn. Just a quick question, and I'm wondering what kind of takeaways you have from this data, if any.
I think probably it raises some questions that might be worth studying, but I'm not sure that it's given me any strong takeaways. How about for you, Judge Kahn, because you see most of those people charged with those 17,000 plus traffic violations?
The data does not seem to create a big takeaway, Counselor, but I can say that what's probably more significant in our court is the economic realities that people face. It seems to go across ethnicity. The people that I see in the traffic arena, and many of them are coming from outside of our city. They work inside the city and they travel to and from, or they're students who are commuting to school. So the data that we're looking at, that small subset, doesn't reflect those individuals who come across. From an anecdotal perspective, what I've experienced is that people struggle financially and have struggled financially significantly during COVID. And so even looking at this data from an ethnicity perspective, those things tend to impact socioeconomic groups greater as you go down the economic chain. And so for us, whenever I'm looking at fines and considering what we've done, it's really helpful to see the data broken out so that I can feel comfortable that I'm not doing something that's not appropriate with individuals. But I can tell you and counsel that what's really important to me when I'm on the bench is that I'm encouraging people to share their economic situation with us, because that's really what's the heart of this. Is, are we imposing fines that are unfair based on someone's racial background, but also based on their economic background? Because many people who come into our city don't have the same resources as some of the people who live within the city. And so I try to elicit that from them when I'm talking to them. And I think it's really important that we do this work where we look back and see whether there are discrepancies as far as the fines that we do impose, because it does keep us, I don't know if honest is the right word, but it allows us to kind of look back and say, are we doing what we think we're doing? So I think the work's really important, and I'm glad the council does it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions before Judge Cook moves on? Okay, seeing none, Judge Cook, back to you.
All right, next slide. So just a brief community court update. Next slide, please. As a reminder, I told you in October that we had just been awarded a community court grant. And these are the details of that grant that I shared with you in October. If you'll go to the next slide, I'll show you where we're at with the implementation. So those top 4 bullets, kind of in that olive green color, shows that what we've done so far. We're really excited that we are close to signing contracts with the 3 big service providers who we'll be working with for those, what is really the heart of the grant financially. And the other thing we're really excited about is the fact that we're taking court out in the community to the unhoused at a location that they frequent over there at Deacon's Closet at Grace Commons Church. And the way we do that is we have a team of people that are going out with a Surface, just like many of you are using these days. And they are, finding people right there on the sidewalk, having them sit down on a stool, and they're participating in court just the way we are on Zoom. They're doing it, but they're doing it from that location, and I'm in the courtroom. We do hope, though, to realize our dream of having community court located somewhere in a facility so that we can have it co-located with key homeless service providers. That's our vision. That's the way they do it in Spokane, which has a lot of parallels to us. And so we are continuing to search for a location where that can happen. Next slide, please. And here's some initial community court data from the first 2 quarters of the grant, just showing you how many people we've screened, enrolled, the number of cases that reflects. You can see that there are quite a few number of cases given the number of people enrolled. For all of these cases, we've assigned sanctions or tasks, many of which, you can see a very high number of which have been completed, and that is resulting in the opportunity for these folks to have their cases dismissed. So that's a very high level overview of where we're at with community court at this point. And next slide is the end and questions you may have about community court.
Thank you, Judge Cook. Council, any questions about community court? Aaron, and then Rachel.
Judge Cook, thanks so much for that. It's very interesting as always. So with that grant, part of it was for substance abuse treatment. How are you expecting to use those funds? What kind of substance abuse treatment will people be able to obtain?
Well, really, we can obtain almost anything except residential treatment. We don't have enough funding for that. If we put somebody in residential treatment, we could probably spend the grant using, over 3 or 4 people. However, one of the models, or one of the community courts in New York, when they started doing this, their initial use or their initial approach was to have outreach workers working with working with the population of people that might need substance use treatment, and just trying to figure out where they were in terms of their readiness for treatment, and to try to build trust and relationships, and then get them engaged in hopes of bringing them into treatment, rather than just going in and saying, okay, you're assigned treatment. This population is pretty skittish about engaging people, and they're very relationship based. So we anticipate that we will have outreach workers who will start that engagement, and then slowly, as people become more trusting and more interested in working on that topic, they'll have the opportunity to do so. It could range from individual treatment to group sessions, depending on what we find. And it can include medication-assisted treatment for people who are open to that, and for situations where we have a medication that makes sense for that individual.
Thanks for that. Well, given that that's one of the biggest challenges that folks face, it'll be really interesting to see what the outcomes are for that portion of the grant. Thank you.
I agree.
Thanks, Aaron. Rachel.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Judge Cook. It's cool to hear that you're going out to Deacon's Closet and kind of meeting people where they are. So I was just curious, when you say you're hoping to work with partners like they do in Spokane, what do you mean by that, or what will that look like? Like, where do you visualize going outside of Deacon's Closet or places like that? What sort of partners?
So in Spokane, they have community court in 2 different sites. One site is in their library, which is downtown, as ours is, and one site is in a community center in a, think about, for instance, a parallel would be if it were at the South Boulder Rec Center or something like that. And in one room, they're conducting court, and in the other room, there are up to about, I would say, 30 service providers that work with the homeless. And so people can go to court and handle their court case, but then they can go next door to the room where the service providers are located. And they're all there in one place. So if they need to apply for a Social Security card, they can do that there. If they want to interface with a substance use treatment provider or a mental health treatment provider, they can do that there. And it can be big things like substance use or mental health treatment, and it can be as small as the Lions Club, for instance, has representatives there in Spokane, and the Lions Club charity is Vision. And so they are there with free glasses that are readers that they will provide to people who may have lost their readers or be in need of readers. So it can run sort of the whole spectrum of the various different resources that people experiencing homelessness might need. And in Spokane, and we hope to emulate this, you don't have to have a court case to go and participate in sort of that resource fair part of the community court session.
That's all awesome. And is that like a weekly thing? I'm sure that court is at least.
Yeah, Spokane is doing it weekly. We've started our community court doing it every other week, just because we're trying to see what the demand is, if you will. And again, right now it's limited to the mobile or pop-up court, as we sometimes call it. But if we can find a site where we can do it and the demand is there for doing it on a more frequent basis, we can do that. Spokane is about twice the size of Boulder, so the need may be different.
Okay. All right. That's great to hear. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rachel. Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Cook. Sounds like you're making great progress and hopefully have great impact. I'm wondering who is conducting the outreach? Is it the court navigators, or was it personnel that was hired to the grant? And what is the funding being used for?
So we haven't actually been able to implement the mental health and the substance use treatment yet. We are still in the phase of the contracts have gone back and forth between the treatment providers and the city attorney's office, and they're very close to being signed. I know for But once they are signed, I think that one of the entities will be ready to go right away with some outreach providers, and the other entity will want to hire specifically for that position. But we envision them going out with the navigators, being introduced by the navigators or maybe the homeless outreach team officers to individuals. So there's kind of a warm handoff from people that this population already knows and trusts. And then I think they may, Deacon's Closet would be a great place for them to go on a regular basis, as well as some other places, depending on what, what the service providers can offer us. We don't want to be disruptive, for instance, but if there were the opportunity to go to Harvest of Hope or to the homeless shelter or some of the other places, that would be great as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions, council? Great. Seeing none, I'll thank you, Judge Cook and Judge Kahn, for being here. Thank you for the updates, and good luck on the community court implementation. We really do look forward to hearing how in particular, the substance abuse treatment goes. So that'll be great. Thank you both for your work.
Thank you, and apologies again for the technical difficulties early on.
We have great sympathy, no problem. And with that, we will be moving on to open comment. And before we begin, I'll call on Brenda Rittenauer to talk to us about our protocols. Brenda.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Rittenauer. I'm with our Communication and Engagement Department. And I will be sharing our virtual meeting rules this evening. Hopefully you can see the slide. Is that correct, Sam?
I can see it, yep.
Great. So just going over our rules quickly as a reminder, these rules help keep our meetings secure from those who might be out to disrupt us in our Zoom platform. So the meeting has been called to conduct the business of the City of Boulder. Activities that disrupt, delay, or otherwise interfere with the meeting are prohibited. The time for speaking or asking questions may be limited. We have 2 minutes for open comment, and we will have 3 minutes for public comment this evening. No person shall speak except when recognized by Mayor Weaver, and no one shall speak longer than the time allotted. We've asked each person to register to speak using your real name, the name you commonly go by. If you're using other than that name, please let me know, and we will get that corrected before you speak. Our next slide is that no video will be permitted other than city officials, employees, and invited speakers or presenters. Others will participate by voice only. The person presiding the meeting this evening, Mayor Weaver, shall enforce these rules by muting anyone who violates the rule or asking me to do so. We don't have the chat function tonight, but we do have the Q&A box, which should be used for technical questions to me only. And only the host or individuals designated by the host will be allowed to share their screen this evening. And with that, we are ready to begin, Mayor Weaver.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. Tonight, we had 8 people signed up for open comment, and the first 3 are Evan Ravitz, David Didon, and Patrick Murphy. Evan.
Hi, Evan Ravitz, North Boulder. Good evening. I'm speaking tonight about my personal experiences in Boulder with being homeless, directly caused by city action, and about when I was evicted under the city's occupancy laws. The old mall commission had police shut down my tightrope show on the mall repeatedly in the 80s until a lawyer discovered they were purely an advisory body under the city charter. I became homeless and lived close by in the foothills, unmolested for over a month. I didn't need services. I needed to be left alone. I quickly worked myself out of it because I was left alone. It's a travesty council intended to spend $2.7 million to chase the homeless around instead of providing a safe legal camp like Denver now has 2 successful examples of. But I'm intrigued to see your final vote has been removed from tonight's agenda. Maybe our new city manager has pulled you back from the brink. In 1993, I spearheaded Boulder's voting by phone ballot initiative. While running this campaign, I was evicted under the city's occupancy laws. I lived with 3 students, all of them practicing small C and large C Christians. We had 1 car between all of us and were quiet and studious. My landlord always suspected that the complaint came from a neighbor who worked for the city, and we both suspected the purpose was to defeat the ballot initiative, which council opposed. So as well as causing people to live in the shadows out of fear of being evicted, this law can be used for political purposes. So I will vote for the Bedrooms Are for People initiative and hope that council improves it by incentivizing affordability and car sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Next, we have David Donone, Patrick Murphy, and Lynn Siegel. David?
You should be able to unmute now, David.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Good evening, Council. I'm David Donone, Executive Director and Chief Curator for the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art. And I think we have a slide. Great, next slide. Next Thursday, July 10th, BIMOCA will celebrate the opening of our summer exhibition, The Stubborn Influence of Painting, guest curated by Colorado artist Kate Pedley. The exhibition brings together 9 diverse artists from across the US and London, whose work erases the boundaries between mediums and categories and examines how the history and influence of painting connects these artists directly and indirectly, establishing common ground in unexpected ways. The works on view include photography, next slide, textile, next slide, ceramics, video, and mixed media constructions. We invite you to join for a free public opening reception on June 10th from 5 to 8 p.m. As well, I would like to extend our gratitude to Mary Young for her thoughtful remarks at Seguimos We Continue, a program at BIMOCA last Thursday that celebrated and honored the community-generated sculpture El Movimiento Sigue, which will be on display in BIMOCA's Inside Out exhibition platform until March 2022. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Patrick Murphy, Lynn Siegel, and Holly Carlson. Patrick.
Waiting for the slide. My name is Patrick Murphy. I've lived in Boulder 51 years. This open comment is intended to give our new city manager, Nuria, a retrospective on Boulder's effort to municipalize the electric system, also known as the Muni. I hope you'll listen to my perspective as someone who loves Boulder and has documented the failures of the Muni effort with over 100 presentations to City Council and made them available on YouTube. I'll send this link to you all. The Muni effort has wasted 10 years and over $30 million. Even though Boulder likes to think we moved Excel to change, and Excel panders to Boulder's vanity and pretends to agree, Boulder is only about 4% of Excel's total electric customer base. My goal is not to shame Boulder, which it certainly deserves in my opinion. My goal is to accelerate carbon reduction in order to mitigate the imminent and current destruction caused by climate change. As city manager, you need to know when to be a cheerleader and when to be a critical filter for nonsense, such as the following 3 lowlights of Boulder's failed Muni effort. 1, it had always been clear that Boulder needed to first pass muster with the Public Utilities Commission. Instead, we wasted many years and much money going instead to the district court and the FERC. 2, the largest expense of the Muni was going to be stranded cost, and never ever in 10 years was an estimate of this made and entered into the financial analysis. It was always treated as a zero cost, and it was never going to be zero. An estimate was never included because it would have ended the Muni immediately. 3, Boulder thought it could take XL customers and facilities outside of the city limits. This was clearly illegal. There are many more examples. Don't let propaganda and confirmational bias derail logic. Think critically, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, we have Lynn Siegel, Holly Carlson, and Riley Mancuso. Lynn?
Know ahead of time how many people are going to be speaking on the open comment, so you can switch it to 3 minutes if there's only 9 people. I mean, on the public hearing, you keep it at 3 minutes because there aren't too many people there. It's like you're so inconsistent. Even within one council meeting, you're inconsistent between all your boards. It's like, these are so basic. Like, you're getting away with 18 minutes instead of 27. Like, what is this about? Come on, people. Regarding the Nexus study that came out about demolition in Boulder, it finally came down to $1 per square foot. That's nothing. And when a place is demoed, the value of that structure gets embedded into the land. And if there's a good, valuable structure there that you could repurpose, we're not hearing about it because the subsidy that the city does is $1 a square foot for demoing. So what is anybody going to recondition anything for? And what are the contractors going to work for? They aren't going to work on repurposing structures. So you need to get down to the brass tacks that causes the issues of homelessness and unaffordable housing in Boulder. You need to do a hearing for Rocky Flats. Seriously, this city has come to such a poor representation of people. You should be ashamed of yourselves, really. Nuria, you're new here. You better take a hold of this situation because this is not okay.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, we have Holly Carlson, Riley Mancuso, and Markeisha Keyhagen. Holly?
Good evening, City Council. This shouldn't take me long, as I'm still wondering, why do we have restrictions on the jails for quote unquote COVID-19 when we have vaccination rates are up? We have vaccinations that are readily available. Yet this past Saturday, I had to play police because I witnessed 2 girls being harassed and gawked at by 2 men from the homeless encampment behind Boulder High School, which has been cleaned up, because I did a lot of complaining this weekend. That's what I got to waste my Saturday on, for doing your jobs. I don't understand why you, Rachel Friend, why you, Aaron Brockett, and why you, Swetlick, sit here constantly and give lame duck ideology to an issue that is very cut and dry. I suggest you go to my hometown of Delray Beach, Florida. We are the rehab capital of North America. We actually got it right. You guys can't seem to do it. There's a company, or actually an industry, called CARP, Comprehensive Alcoholism Rehabilitation Programs. They are governmentally funded. They work side by side with the judges. So when these criminals, who you guys think just should give tickets to constantly and let them run amok our city, in our courts in Florida, the judges sit here and go, well, no, this is what you've done. And if you'd like to either go to jail or you can go to CARP, we're more than happy to pay for it. I don't understand why you guys keep on sitting here and not doing anything when we have the Wild West going on. And I can guarantee you that the majority of the citizens here living in Boulder are not ready to live in Gotham City. And the students here coming to see you, they go home and they tell their parents. And the people who go back to Florida that I rode on a plane with 2 weeks ago went home and told their parents what they got to hang out with. And I saw a lot of mom and dads at the United Airlines baggage claim not very happy. So you guys better wake up, smell the coffee and all the feces outside of our homes that we're dealing with, because you guys have let this come out of hand.
Thank you, Holly. Next, we have Riley Mancuso, Markeisha Keyhagen, and Sherry Hack. Riley.
Hello, Council. I am here to say that I wish my community a joyous Pride Month, and I wish each and every one of you a distressing and challenging one. Keep the words pride out of your mouths, keep the rainbows off of your dumb shit. Queer people are not just like you, and we don't want to be. We don't want the things you want. I am not gay as in happy, but queer as in fuck you. Keep Stonewall out of your mouths. Storm DeLavier, Miss Major, Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, they resisted arrest and threw bricks at cops to protect each other. That is what Pride Month means. It means fighting cops. At the time, they were condemned by the wealthy white assimilationist gay organizations like the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis. Have you bothered learning that history? I imagine Bob Yates, who hypocritically read this toothless declaration, was the kind of guy who got together to beat up long hairs and back in high school. And you don't stand hand in hand with the LGBT community. What a joke. You despise me. You think I'm annoying and crass and hysterical because I am the one who is fighting tirelessly for our queer rights. You do not. You tell me that I am uncivil and that I am whatever. You don't care about LGBT people when we are actually queer and strange and off-putting to your middle class, upper class, white, cishet sensibilities. Your every action makes it clearer that you don't really care about queer people. And cops are always antithetical to trans people. If you insist that the courthouse is the only place that homeless people should be accessing services, if you demonize and people with addictions and mischaracterize how those work physiologically and mentally in terms of PTSD and societal oppression, then you are forcing people who have often been victims of police brutality and sexual assault from police officers to be booked into the criminal justice system, have their dead names displayed in the courts and in press releases in the newspaper forever, and then put in Boulder County Jail, trans women put with men in Boulder County Jail.
Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Riley. Your time is up. Next, we have Markeisha Key Hagan and Sherry Hack. Markeisha.
Just doing a quick audio check.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I want to thank you all for your role in shepherding us through the difficult times we've endured over the past year. One being the pandemic, and two, the King Soopers mass shooting. We as a community have been through a lot, and I come here tonight with an ask that I believe would help uplift our community. With COVID restrictions loosening, I would love to see some sort of government-sponsored community outdoor gathering or festival type event towards the end of summer, maybe during the fall. And I see this event as helping to facilitate our community's healing. And I think it would do that by one, allowing us as a community to hold space for reflecting on and sorting through our past year with our neighbors who have experienced these events alongside us. And then two, I think it can be a place where those that are still dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic, and whether that's the financial ramifications or mental health, et cetera, can get accesses to the resources that they need all in one place. And this especially speaks to our neighbors that are typically marginalized and have been affected the most over the past year. And then lastly, I think it would be a great opportunity for us to showcase the strengths of our community. So like the, loving, caring neighbors that are here in Boulder, but also the arts, the food, the music of the various cultures that are represented here in Boulder. And so I also cannot forget that, as government is for the people, by the people, it would be imperative that the event be planned alongside community members. I really hope that you take this request seriously. And please know that I'm willing to help in any way that I can in making this event happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Markeisha. And our last speaker for open comment will be Sherry Hack. Sherry.
Thank you. I've been a resident of Boulder since 1999. I'd like to discuss crime in Boulder, which is soaring. Each day I read new incidents of crime in our city and how people are afraid to use the parks, bike paths, Discarded needles are found everywhere, such as next to the bike paths and the Mapleton ball fields, etc. This is thanks to the city giving out free needles, not even a needle exchange. I've been a crime victim and the person that threatened my life because I wouldn't give him any money. He was not arrested as the jail is closed. When will the jail reopen? COVID is pretty much over. We have vaccinations. Anyway, the person who threatened me was only given a summons to appear in court, which he didn't do because there was no incentive in there. He had no known address for the police to go apprehend him. I also want to talk about Senate Bill 273. I don't understand why City Council supports Bill 273. If this bill passes, it won't be a good thing for the increasing crime we have in Boulder. Police will not be able to do their job and protect the community from violent offenders who will be released back into the community. Boulder Police Department needs funding and tools needed to protect our community. City Council should approve and enforce ordinances that prevent illegal camps from redeveloping and prevent the use of propane tanks. If this bill passes, there will be no meaningful consequences for illegal behavior. 273 isn't about bail equity. It's about making it impossible for the police to protect our communities. I don't understand why City Council won't adequately enforce our laws and protect our residents and local business owners. It's like you care more about people who come into Boulder, don't stay very long, choose to live on the streets, do drugs, commit crimes, than you do more about the residents who live here and really care about the city and form the community. And guess what? There's a new situation in Texas that's developed. They have passed a statewide camping ban in the entire state. And this may well exacerbate the problems we have in Boulder because these folks may come here. Why not?
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we will close open comment and bring it back. And first, I'll turn to staff, Nuria or City Attorney. I'm looking around. Sandra, there you are. Nuria or Sandra, do you have any response or feedback?
None here. Thank you.
Not at this time. I appreciate hearing from community.
Great. Thank you both. Council, any response, feedback? Great. Seeing none, close open comment completely, and I'll turn back to Alicia.
All right, sir. Next, we have on our agenda, our consent agenda, which has items A through C.
Very good. Thanks very much. So council, any comments, questions on the consent agenda or a motion? Aaron.
So I wanted to get a question out there that I asked at CAC this morning, just for the record. It's about item 3B, which is about electric smoking device taxes. So if staff could just clarify, please, how the vaping tax will apply to different products sold in a marijuana dispensary. So I think there's a lack of clarity about that in the community right now. So would you mind addressing that, please?
Sure. Good evening, Council. Joel Wagner, Tax and Special Projects Manager. And I believe we have a slide. We'll wait for clerk to pull that up. Let's see. Let's see if I can share mine here. Okay, thank you, Council Member Brockett, for bringing this up this morning. So very high level, and we'll go into this more during second reading, but these devices can be broken down into several categories. And you can see on the left hand of your slide, number one is the actual devices themselves. So some of these devices are refillable devices that take a proprietary pod or refill. Others are designed to take organic material or some other form of concentrate that can be purchased at bulk and then filled. And then on the right-hand side, under number two, we actually have pods and disposable devices themselves that come pre-filled and then are designed to be disposed of after they're fully consumed. So number one is the devices themselves. Those would be taxed under the ordinance. Actually, as the ordinance is currently written, are taxed at 40%. And then the devices themselves, or the pods and disposables that come pre-filled with marijuana, would be taxed at the marijuana rates. So circle number 1 would be taxed at the 40% plus the city's normal 3.86%. The disposable pods or devices that are pre-filled and contain marijuana would be taxed at the additional 3.5% plus the city's 3.86%. The value of the actual plastic itself that these pods and cartridges come in, we're viewing as de minimis, and that we wouldn't attempt to break that value out from the actual disposable device itself. And then the third scenario is when these products are sold in bundles. So what you see here in the middle is a Pax Era vaporizer. The bottom half in the blue circle is actually essentially a battery. And then the top part that's circled in red is the refillable or the disposable pod that contains their marijuana. So we would look at that based on the value of each component of that. So the reusable battery piece would be taxed at the 40%, and then the disposable pod would be taxed at the value of the marijuana that's in it at the 3.5%.
So thanks, Joel. That's very helpful and clarifying. Would you mind sending a copy of that slide out to us when you get a chance so that we have it handy to show?
We'd be happy to, absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, any more issues with the consent agenda, or is there a motion? Mark.
Sorry about that. I have also a question about the ordinance. One of the letters we got claimed that some of the devices for consumption of marijuana run into the hundreds of dollars. Is that true? I'm sadly out of date on that.
That's correct. Yeah, some of them are large desktop devices, and they can run in the $400 to $500 to even $600 range.
Well, then I guess my question is this actually going to generate revenue for us, or is it simply going to be a sales tax boost for Louisville and Lafayette? I mean, on what basis would one want to spend $600 on a device you can get in Louisville for $400?
I'll defer to
I'm not quite sure what we're going to be achieving with this.
Mark, this doesn't go to the underlying tax. That was passed by the voters in 2019 as an attempt to discourage youth access to these smoking devices. This is a clarification of the code, because some businesses have refused to pay the tax because they claim it doesn't apply to anything that's used for marijuana.
But I don't think it changes my question, which is if we then clarify the ordinance to make it applicable to those devices, what exactly will we be achieving if we can fairly predict that those devices will still be acquired, but through a 10-minute car ride to another municipality?
So now, if those devices are sold in a tobacco shop or any other shop, they're taxed. The marijuana businesses are marijuana, and actually some smoke shops like the Fitter are refusing to pay the tax, claiming that it's not intended for products that are used to smoke, to vape marijuana products, which isn't the case.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, as you look at the statutory language, we clearly have enough scope in there to make it applicable. We did have the appropriate language in there, but I do question a little bit whether that was the original intent of this legislation. I mean, it really spoke, and it really did speak almost entirely to vaping devices and the like.
The intent of the legislation was to discourage youth access to vaping products. And I don't think it was the intent of council or the voters that they should be able to get them cheaper in a smoke shop than in one place than another.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Very good. Thank you all. Bob.
If there's no more questions, I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And Alicia, I think this is a roll call, correct?
Yes, sir, it is. Councilmember Brockett,
So if Sam, do you mind if I just speak a few words as I vote?
No, of course not. Go for it.
Great. So I'll vote yes on the consent agenda, but I'm going to vote nay on 3C, the supplemental appropriations to the 2021 budget. And just to be clear, I'm supportive of the vast majority of those budget appropriations, including the downtown ambassadors, the new park rangers. But I'm voting no just because I feel like the additional police funding at this time, when we have so many unfilled positions in the police department, is not the right way to be spending that money while we still have so many departments that are suffering cuts because of COVID. So that's my vote. Just wanted to speak to it. Thank you.
Councilmember Friend,
My vote is the same as Aaron's yes to the consent agenda, except for as to 3C and for the reasons that Aaron so well articulated.
Councilmember Joseph,
Aye.
Nagel,
I'll be voting yes on everything, and I hope that this helps the community, those especially who've been calling in and worried about the crime that's happening. I hope it helps show that we're very serious about fixing these issues.
Councilmember Swetnick,
Yes, no on 3C.
Councilmember Wallach,
Aye.
Mayor Weaver,
Aye.
Councilmember Yates,
Aye.
and Councilmember Young.
Yes.
The consent agenda passed, sir, with nays on 3C from Brockett, Friend, and Swetnick.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have our call-up check-ins. First, we will begin with item 4A, an application to rename the Settlers Park Trailhead and Park area in West Boulder to the People's Crossing.
And I'll ask Dan Burke and Philip Yates to come forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. My name is Dan Burke, Director of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department. And Phil will join us in just a minute. I just wanted to first express my thanks to Council for providing us with a few minutes of time to walk you through the process that was undertaken over the last 5 years to bring this name change before you. And just to express how exciting it is to bring this to fruition. It's been a 5-year effort that it's involved a number of community members, community groups, a board, a commission, a lot of staff folks, the council, of course, and over a dozen Native American nations that we have consulted with. And I believe that we are bringing forward a name that was suggested from the recent consultation the city conducted with American Indian nations that is very appropriate. And from the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department perspective, we would be honored to rename this particular park that we manage to the People's Crossing. So just want to provide that perspective and and to thanks everybody who's had a hand in this. And with that, I invite Philip Yates from the Communications Department to walk us through how this came to be.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Yeah, so thank you, Dan. Good evening, council members. My name is Phil Yates. I'm with the City Communications and Engagement Department, and look forward to presenting some information about Settlers Park, the name change from Settlers Park to the People's Crossing. Next slide. Yeah, before we share information about the process that we undertook, as Dan said, for close to 5 years, just want to show the location for everyone where Settlers Park is. It's in far west Boulder, just north of Canyon and just south of the Red Rocks Formation in far west Boulder. Next slide. So while the city, we have a lot of land history about the current Settlers Park area, we recognize that our history of the location is primarily informed by Euro-American source material and does not include indigenous perspectives. But as what we know about the history, the Settlers Park area is generally thought to be the area where Arapaho chief Niwot, according to the city's Indigenous Days, People's Day resolution and other histories, told a party of gold seekers in 1858 that they could not remain on indigenous land as defined by the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851. Next slide. The city of Boulder actually acquired the parcels where the current Settlers Park trailhead and parts of the park area exist in 1961 and 1965. But through a lot of the research that OSMP did is that it actually indicates that the area has primarily been known as Red Rocks for most of its time. And in fact, the name Settlers Park does not appear to be in widespread or informal or colloquial usage prior to the 1990s. Today, with the open space area, the Settlers Park area is a high visitation area managed by Open Space. Close to 98,000 visits, actually records close to 98,000 visits per year. Next slide. So yeah, the way this started, and we really want to just thank the incredible work of community members in developing the Indigenous Peoples' Day resolution, because that's what started this process. The resolution had two major goals. The first was focus on the Boulder area and its significance to Native American culture, and accurately portray the history of Indigenous interaction with Euro-American settlers who arrived in the 19th century. Next slide. Before we go too much into the history, I think it's always important just for the community and us to just reflect on some of the really important statements that are in the Indigenous Peoples' Day resolution. So I'll just give some time for people to reflect and read that. All right, next slide. Now, as it relates to Settlers Park, the resolution requires the city to correct omissions of the Native American presence in public places, resources, and cultural programming. And it actually specifically directed the city to receive input from American Indian tribal nations that share agreements with the city for a name that commemorates the indigenous presence on the parkland known as Settlers Park. Next slide. So just running through the steps of how the process came to be, with the direction provided by the Indigenous Peoples' Day resolution. Following that, city staff, we documented name suggestions that came in for, I think, 2 years following the adoption of the resolution. Then, as we moved forward and we started organizing city tribal consultation, we collected those names and then presented them at the 2019 consultation with 14 tribal governments. During that time, we presented information on the Indigenous Peoples' Day resolution. Tribal representatives visited Settlers Park. I believe some folks on this meeting actually participated in that. We discussed the naming suggestions documented by city staff. And what that resulted, it was about a 2-hour conversation. And what resulted was a broadly supported name suggestion for further discussion. And here's just a picture of staff and representatives when we ended the second day of consultation in 2019. Next slide. So the next step in the process was a city tribal working group that was convened following the 2019 consultation. And that was focused on updating agreements with this that the city shares with tribal nations. But what the working group also did was they ultimately recommended further consideration of the name suggestion that received support at the 2019 consultation. Many of us participated several weeks ago in the 2021 consultation, where again, we spoke for about 2 hours about renaming Settlers Park. They reflected on the name suggestion that was supported at the 2019 consultation. And during that conversation, a tribal representative and elder who actually previously consulted with the city in the 1990s and the early 2000s provided insights that led to a collaborative discussion among representatives, and ultimately the name the People's Crossing. And here we are tonight to provide this information and receive any final direction regarding the name. So next slide. So there were several meetings that were discussed at the two consultation regarding renaming Settlers Park. The first is that, and this came from the last consultation, was that Boulder and the Settlers Park area have been a crossroads for Indigenous peoples who have traversed and lived in the mountains and plains of the Boulder area since time immemorial. That the people, or our people, are English translations from how many American Indian tribal nations that we consult with refer to themselves in their native languages, and that the usage of the term the people is meant to be inclusive of all people who have traveled through and have lived in the Boulder area. So a lot of different conversations, a lot of themes that were discussed, but this is pretty reflective of the high level that input and guidance that we received that ultimately led to this name. Next slide. Renaming this area and installing additional interpretive materials, education signage will really help the city to acknowledge the Indigenous presence on the Boulder area land, help Boulder fulfill the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution, help advance city racial equity plan goals and strategies. As an important part of the 2021 consultation, we agreed to form a working group to help us develop interpretive signage and materials for the area. And we believe this might mark the first time a city facility has ever been named with the guidance and insights from American Indian tribal nations. So with this renaming, we believe we can accomplish several important steps forward. Next slide. As we go ahead, it's, I think, really important to extend our gratitude for the 14 tribal nations who had participated in helping us to rename Settlers Park. Many people can read it, but it probably would be worthwhile for some of our audience to read them out. It's the Apache tribe of Oklahoma, the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma, the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, the Comanche Nation of Oklahoma, the Eastern Shoshone tribe, the Jicarilla Apache Nation, the Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma, the Northern Arapaho tribe, the Northern Cheyenne tribe, the Ogallala Sioux tribe, the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma, the Rosebud Sioux tribe, the Southern Ute Indian tribe, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, and the Ute Indian tribe of the Uinta and Ouray Reservation. Next slide. And I think what is really important, just to extend our gratitude to consultants who have helped us through this process. Ernest has provided several training sessions on consultation. Ernest House of the Keystone Policy Center. We want to extend our gratitude to him, but also to Jessica Yaquinto with Living Heritage Anthropology, who's played an important role in helping us to organize and facilitate consultation conversations. So again, extend our deep gratitude to them for helping us. Next slide. With moving forward, we have several steps that we have planned following tonight. And so what we're looking for in early August is to have a tentative city tribal working group meeting where we can discuss at just a very high level the education and commemoration for the area and to receive some input on our land acknowledgement that we are developing. Late summer and early fall, provide another update on the work that we're doing right now. In August and early October, we will look to replace the sign infrastructure that's in the area. And then by late September and early October, we would like to have all the work, or we plan to have all the work done to have the commemoration of Settlers Park be renamed to the People's Crossing officially completed by then. Next slide. And here are just a few examples of the sign infrastructure that we're looking right now to install in the area. The first is the Trail ID sign with the template font styles. That's what we plan for the parking lot. Secondary kiosk would be located as you walk from the parking lot up to Red Rocks. And then the wayfinding signs would just be to help people go through the area, but all these sign packages, these signs would have the new name, the People's Crossing. As a part of this, we also are planning for some temporary signage just to help inform people about the name change, the meaning behind it, and how tribal nations helped inform the name change. Next slide. And then moving forward, we anticipate removing or replacing these older interpretive panels and signs with new long-term interpretive panels developed by the City Tribal Working Group. But in the meantime, we are also anticipating installing additional temporary signage here to again explain the meaning behind the name and how it came to pass, and how we all developed it in cooperation with American Indian tribal nations. Next slide. And with that, any questions?
Very good. Thanks so much, Dan and Philip, for the presentation. And council members, I'll turn to you. Mary.
Thank you, Sam. And it is such a pleasure and honor to finally be at this point. I had the privilege of participating in the drafting of the resolution. And when we came up with this idea of renaming Settlers Park, we thought, easy peasy, should be, quick, easy, fast. Nevertheless, it's been a really thoughtful process, and I'm really grateful to staff and for Ernest and Jessica, as well as all of the tribal nations and members that participated in the tribal consultation. So thank you all. I also had the privilege of being at this year's tribal consultation during the conversation regarding the actual renaming. And I have to just share that it was one of the most beautiful processes in terms of the collaborative and deferential and just inclusive manner in which everyone who was there, and in particular the tribal members, that just, it was just a beauty to behold. And we can only aspire to that kind of consensus building and collaborative way of being. So thank you all once again, and woohoo.
Great. Well, I'll jump in here as well and echo what Mary said. It has been a very enriching process to watch this develop and to have the privilege to interact with the tribal nations assembled as a group, and to watch them interact with each other, amongst themselves and with us. The wisdom that they bring to the deliberations is something, as Mary said, something to behold, and it's very inspiring. Actually, it caused me to think deeply about what leadership means and what community means. So it was great. I'm very happy that we're here, and I never could have imagined how wonderful a name would end up on this park. And it is a beautiful name and a beautiful concept. So thank you to staff, thank you to our consultants, and thank you most of all to the tribal nations who have helped us look back and learn from mistakes, and hopefully be able to walk together in solidarity. Aaron.
Yeah, echo all of that. Just thanks so much to everyone. City staff that worked so hard on this, and the council members who participated, and all the community members and the Human Relations Committee members, and the tribal nation participants. And so we took the slow road on this one, on this renaming, but I think it was the right road, and we've ended up with a process and a name that our community can be proud of for generations. So thanks, everyone.
Very good. And I'll just comment that this will be a bit undramatic in the sense that we probably won't take an action tonight to call it up, but what that non-action is our wholehearted approval of the city manager approval of this park name. So even though we're not going to be voting on this, by not calling it up, we are giving our unanimous approval of this name. So council staff, any further comments? All right, very good. Thank you all so much. And with that, I'll turn back to you, Alicia.
All right, sir. Our next item is item 4B, call up for the site review amendment for a new 11,534 square foot dining and commons building located on the campus of the Boulder County Day School at 4820 Nautilus Court North. The applicant is seeking a 62% parking reduction. It is under case number LUR 2019-00071.
Any interest in calling this up? Nope, I see none, Alicia.
All right, thank you, sir. Item 4C is our call-up consideration item for a non-conforming use review to permit renovation and reconfiguration of an existing 3-story, 18,469 square foot, 24-unit apartment building at 1024 Marine Street into 2 interconnected buildings and 18 attached dwelling units with a new ground floor common area. The existing building and site are not conforming to density, open space, and parking. Reviewed under case number LUR 2020-00020.
Thank you. Any question, desire to call it up? I saw 2 at the same time. We'll go with Aaron and then Mark. Aaron?
Mark, you go first. I've been talking.
It's just a procedural question. If we do not call this up, I assume the decisions of staff and planning board are controlling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron.
Yeah, I have no desire to call this up. The planning board 7-0 vote on this was very compelling. One thing I just wanted to question about I know that there was a question about whether the dining rooms could be changed into bedrooms. If the applicant redid, would they be able to redo their applications to make it completely clear that the dining rooms are not bedrooms and reapply with this denial?
Thanks for the question, Aaron. They would. We think that there's a solution to the floor plans out there. So it's just a matter of the applicant redesigning those floor plans and resubmitting an application.
I was just curious if that avenue is still open to them. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you, Aaron. Sounds like no desire for this one either, Alicia.
All right, sir. Next on our agenda, we have our public hearings. Item 5A is the second reading and a consideration of a motion to adopt ordinance 8436, amending section 6-14-13 prohibited acts and 6-16-13 prohibited acts of the BRC 1981 to allow the sale of consumable hemp-infused products at marijuana retail businesses and setting forth related details.
Should I go forward with the presentation, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I apologize. Yes, my mute button was stuck, but Kathy Haddock is presenting for us today. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. This one should be an easy one. I'm Kathy Haddock with the City Attorney's Office. This ordinance is a recommendation from the Cannabis Licensing and Advisory Board. The only consumable products allowed to be sold at marijuana businesses is marijuana. When we did the language changes for hemp and marijuana together being considered cannabis, we didn't at that time notice that we needed to change the definition in what marijuana products could be sold in marijuana stores too. The unintended consequence is that every retail store in the city can sell hemp and CBD products except marijuana businesses. This is to correct that inadvertent mistake and let marijuana businesses sell all cannabis products, not just marijuana ones. At the public hearing before CLAB on this, there was no opposition, and I have not heard of any opposition separately. So this ordinance is supported by both staff and CLAB.
Very good. And is that the full presentation, Kathy?
That's a full presentation.
Super. So then we'll go to council questions. Does council have any questions? Great. Seeing none, then I think we will open the public hearing. By my count, we have one person signed up for the public hearing. That's Lynn Siegel. And Lynn will have 3 minutes when you're ready.
I don't need to speak, thanks.
All right. With that, we will close the public hearing and bring this back to council. Council, looking for discussion, comments, questions, or a motion. Mark.
I think Kathy is right. This does seem to be an easy one to me. I'm not quite sure what the other side of it is. And so if there's a reason to be more cautious, I'd like to hear it.
I honestly don't believe that there is one. This is something that's been approved at the state level too, and we have really heard no opposition.
Great. Adam, Bob, hold it. Hang on. Let me see who got the buzzer first. Adam, you're first.
I was just going to move ordinance 8463.
Great. Bob is
and Bob is going to second.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Great. Seeing no hands for discussion. If you do not want this motion to pass, please let me know now. This is the vote.
It needs a roll call, sir.
Oh, roll call.
Because
Beautiful.
it is a motion to adopt.
All right.
Just sent you a notice.
Okay. That's okay. Go for it.
All righty. Councilmember Brockett.
Aye.
Friend.
Yes.
Joseph.
Aye.
Nagel.
Aye.
Swetlick.
Yes.
Wallach.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yates.
Yes.
And Young.
Yes.
Ordinance 8436, Mayor, is adopted.
That is excellent. Thank you very much. And that has got to be the shortest public hearing I've been part of. So congratulations, everyone. Alicia, what's next?
Next is our second public hearing, item 5B, and it's the second reading and motion to adopt ordinance 8464, which would repeal Boulder Revised Code 11-4-3, aircraft permitted at the airport.
And we will ask Erica to come forward and present.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. So Mayor, Council, thank you very much for having me here today to represent this. I'm hoping that I can help Emily pull up the presentation very quickly. Thank you. And essentially today, we're asking you to please consider repealing the ordinance restricting aircraft at the airport. So as our next slide shows, as I cue Emily for the next slide. So essentially back in, thank you. The current ordinance restricts ultralight vehicles in particular, as well as balloons, kites, and unmanned rockets, because they were not considered to be aircraft back in 1982. And so as the next slide shows, in 1982, whenever that was adopted, the FAA had been considering various ordinances and regulations around that, but then they decided they weren't going to actually follow through on that. So Boulder, kind of jumped the gun a little bit. What has happened in the intervening years is that most recently we had gotten, the FAA had gotten a complaint, and the FAA came to us, and an ultralight aircraft user wanted to use BMA, the Boulder Airport, and then complained to FAA. And the FAA told us that we could not restrict those aircraft to the airport because they were not considered to be unsafe by the FAA. So in the next slide, Thank you. So essentially, in the next slide that over here is that we have started allowing the ultralight vehicle use, the aircraft use at the airport in response to that. But in order to make sure that the fix is long-term, we were asking City Council to actually repeal the ordinance. The important thing to note, however, is that in the future, the city can always request a safety study be done by the FAA if we feel that there are restrictions needed on a type of aircraft. But currently, the FAA does not feel that these aircraft are unsafe at our airport. So essentially, then we have a recommendation that in the next slide that council repeal the ordinance so that we're in compliance with FAA regulations, and that we would not be subject to losing grants, having to repay grants that the FAA had given us for the upkeep and maintenance of the airport. So with that, as the next slide says, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Thanks so much, Erica. Council, questions? I see Mary, and then we'll start with Mary, and then we have Aaron and Mark. Mary.
Thank you, Erica. Just a quick question. I'm wondering if the city could sustain the airport without the grants of the FAA.
And I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I think that we'd have to, find a source of revenue and really increase the hangar fees and so forth at the airport. And we'd need to actually do an in-depth analysis to ascertain whether or not those grants. So it's in addition to those grants, there are other assurances that the FAA has given us over the years. So we'd need to explore that further.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Aaron.
Erica, thanks for that. Just wanted to clarify, given the grants that we have accepted in the past from the FAA that have kind of conditioned us to behave in certain ways with the airport, we essentially don't really have a choice on repealing this ordinance, right? Because it sounds like we'd be subject to FAA action of one kind or another if we tried to continue to forbid these types of aircraft.
That
right?
would be accurate. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, very good. Mark.
Erica, is there any discretion in the nature of what can initiate a request for a study? For instance, I know noise pollution is a major issue for residents around the airport. Is that the basis for calling for a study?
No, it would be a safety issue.
Okay. And what would be the predicate for calling for a safety study? I mean, does there have to be an accident?
So if we felt that a particular aircraft or aircraft type were to be unsafe, but the FAA has already shared with us that they don't feel these aircraft are unsafe and can operate safely at the airport. And our airport manager had agreed with that assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I see no further questions. With that, we will turn to public hearing. I believe we have one person signed up for the public hearing, and that's Lynn Siegel. Lynn.
This is as much a no-brainer as the other one, but it's also a no-brainer that when you've got 9 people, you do 3 minutes each. Done.
All right, thank you, Lynn. With that, we will close public hearing and bring it back to council. Council discussion, questions, motion. I see hands left over from Mary and Aaron. Are yours new or Mary? Aaron, okay, Aaron, and then Mary.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 8464 to repeal Boulder Revised Code 11.4-3, aircraft permitted at airport.
And I will second it.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Aaron, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I'll just reiterate what I said in my question more or less, which is that this is essentially an action that's required that we take in order to stay in compliance with FAA guidelines. So it seems like what we need to do.
Thanks, Aaron. Mary?
And I would echo what Aaron said. And in addition, add that if the airport is used in emergency situations such as fires and floods, it's been critical to the safety of the residents. And I will say that if we were to not, it sounds like from what Erica said, if we were to not accept grants from the FAA, the airport would become even more exclusive than it might be already. And so for all those reasons, I support this.
Super, thanks. And I'll jump in here and say airplane noise is a real issue in the region. And what's been going on at some of the neighboring airports near us have been creating a good deal of angst among the impacted communities, which include some of our communities, particularly in the north and east part of the city. This action really is unrelated to noise. I don't think allowing balloons and ultralights is going to make much of a difference in the noise profile of our airport. And like Mary said, when it's needed, this airport is a critical facility for us. We've used it for evacuations in both floods and fires. So having the airport is a great benefit. The noise that comes from some of the activities at local regional airports is being problematic, and that's something that we should consider and keep in mind as we go forward. What we're doing tonight has very little impact one way or another on the noise situation at the airport, so that's why I will be supporting it. Any other comments? Very good. With that, I believe we're ready for a vote. Alicia, you told me this is roll call.
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you. Councilmember Friend?
Yes.
Joseph?
Aye.
Nagel?
Aye.
Swetlick?
Yes.
Wallach?
You calling me?
Wallach?
I thought I'd said aye.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yates?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
And Brockett?
Aye.
Mayor, ordinance 8464 was adopted unanimously.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
All right. Our next item is item 8, matters from the mayor and members of council. 8A is a discussion on possible scheduling conflict with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game and the June 13th, 2021 City Council special meeting.
Very good. Thank you. And I want to tee this up as a broader discussion than just that. We will probably start with that. But at CAC this morning, we had some scheduling discussions that I wanted to bring to all of council. And one of the ones that got brought up is exactly what Alicia just told us about, which is that at our special meeting in July, the first meeting that we are back from our break, that falls on the same date, which I believe is July 13th, as the All-Star Game, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. And Councilmember Joseph brought up this conflict and wanted to see if we wanted to make any considerations over the All-Star Game. So, Junie, I'll turn to you and see if you want to say anything else about this.
There's not much I would like to add at this moment, but I think Mayor Bai can probably give us a little bit more context around the game.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, I just had wondered if we might adjust the meeting to either a study session or move it to a Thursday, the 15th, because some of us might be attending or wanting to attend. Normally, I would not have brought this up, but this is a pretty big deal for our state, especially considering the reasons why the game was transferred to Colorado. And I applaud Major League Baseball for moving it to the state of Colorado due to Georgia's restrictive voting laws that were now being implemented. So I was just wondering if there was other council members who were interested in either just changing it to a study session so that some of us wouldn't miss that, or moving it to Thursday, July 15th, so that we could all attend.
Very good. So I'd invite council members to weigh in with your thoughts. Rachel.
I think it's a bit of a slippery slope if we start moving things around for events like this. Like there's been some big political nights on Tuesdays where or things maybe I wanted to testify or go to at the State House too. And you just kind of have to pick. So I would be cautious of us opening this can of worms of moving council meetings around for other events.
Very good. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Anyone else? Mark?
You know, I share Rachel's caution, but I feel persuaded by Mirabai's comments that this game was moved here for a very, very specific reason, because of what was happening in Georgia. And I would like to be supportive of Major League Baseball for having the courage to do that. I think that possibly rescheduling the meeting would be an appropriate way of expressing that support. Plus, I like baseball, but that's a different story. I think this would be an appropriate reason for considering a rescheduling.
Thank you, Mark. Bob?
I'm pretty agnostic about this, and I'm happy to go with the will of council. I just wanted to observe that I think converting this into a study session is probably not going to work because we have two pretty important public hearings that night. As a matter of fact, I think those are the only two items of business that night, are those two public hearings. So I think moving to a study session is not probably an option, but I'm fine with postponing it until July 14th or 15th, if that's the will of council. I'm kind of agnostic about it.
Thanks, Bob. Mary, and then Aaron. Mary?
I'm kind of like Bob, I'm kind of agnostic, but I will say this, that we have moved meetings around for particular needs of one council member. For whatever reason, they can't attend on a Tuesday, and we have been accommodating of singular council members when they have asked. So that's one comment. And then the other comment is just that I'm not a big baseball fan, but I am a voting rights fan. So, I'll go with the will of council on this one.
Thanks, Mary. Aaron, and then Mirabai. Aaron?
Sorry. I think we do need to have a meeting that week. Personally, I wouldn't reschedule it for a sporting event as much as I support the voting rights issue. I would save it for a few words at the meeting itself. But if people wanted to move it to Wednesday or Thursday that week, I think we could probably work with that if that would be preferable to council.
Mirabai.
Again, this wasn't meant to move it just because of me. It was partially just for the community as well. I don't know if our community is interested in baseball like I am. I don't know if others share that same passion. It was more, if people were wanting to either be watching the game or be attending, because it was a pretty big honor for our state. So that was, it wasn't just for me to move it. That I don't care about. It was more for the community, and if it would, be a better timing to move it to a different day. So that's all. It was just a thought. No worries if it doesn't happen, but just a thought.
Great, thank you. Jeannie?
I was just gonna add, similar to Mark, I find Mirabai's view compelling, that we do this job not just for us. The fact that it is public is not for us. It's for community members. And if most of the community or a lot of community members will be watching a game and they will not be watching city council, I just think, again, what's the purpose of having this broadcast on Channel 8? So I really think switching the day is probably going to be good for community. And also for the special meeting, my understanding is that we will not have open comment. So I don't think anyone will be inconvenienced in that way. So I think that's a good idea to change the date. I find it compelling.
Thank you, Jeannie. Mark?
And just a short comment, under the circumstances, I know a lot of people are not baseball fans, but under the circumstances under which we received the All-Star game, I'm suggesting this year people should be, because it was an important thing.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. And I'll just weigh in here. I am a baseball fan. I would not move this for the All-Star game. But I think for me, there's enough time in the week. I'm happy to move the meeting to Thursday, which would be a typical time for us to put it on. We do not have the luxury of making it into a study session. We have 4.5 hours of meeting that night already scheduled with no public comment, or no open comment rather. So it's a big meeting. CAC is already wrestling with this. We'll probably move one of those items off. So it's a minimum of 3 hours. Each of the items with, an energetic council could be more than its 1.5 hours scheduled. So this is a big meeting that we definitely shouldn't shift over into a study session. I'm happy having it on that night because these meetings are taped for a reason, so that people can watch them if they want afterwards. That being said, this is a pretty different kind of all-star game because of the reason it was moved to Colorado. So I'm ambivalent about whether we move it to the Thursday night, but I certainly do not want to change it into a study session. Rachel?
Just sometimes I think we think of ourselves more than the other people who have to be at the meeting. So I guess before we make a decision, I would hope that Nuria has a chance to check in with staff. People schedule vacations. A lot of us say like Tuesday night's the night that I leave available for council. It's true of me that week. So I'm cautious of moving this. I am a baseball fan too, and I hope to get tickets to this game. So it's not like I'm against people watching the game, but I think that it's maybe a little bit self-centered of us to think of ourselves, and community members largely watch our meetings. Will a lot read tweet recaps of our meetings, and then a lot watch them the day after. So I think that the community will be able to watch the meeting at their leisure if they want to, but I'd be leery of moving this without really checking in with whatever staff need to be there.
Super. And Rachel, that's a very good reminder. I'll turn to Nuria and see if you've got any input into this. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam, and to council for the discussion. Certainly appreciate all the information brought together. We definitely want to maintain it for that week and believe that it cannot be turned, for the reasons you mentioned, Sam, into a study session. We've got some meaty items, and having a special call was in a short month a way for us to have 2 meetings in the month of July. Having said that, I do believe that we are working to reschedule one of those, but we still have about a little over 3 hours for the others. I might put, if our planning staff is on, and I do not know if they are, just put them on the spot to make sure that that works for them. And I do not see them actually.
I'm not
Great.
seeing them.
And with that, I think I'll just pull up what those are so that we all remember. One of them is community benefits. One is a concept review for Diagonal Plaza, and the other is the community culture and safety tax, or the community capital infrastructure tax. So those are the 3 items. All of them would involve planning staff, and the capital tax issue would involve more staff as well. And I would also remind us, just to put in the hopper, that we will be meeting that next Tuesday in a regular meeting on the 20th as well. So if we do move this to Thursday, we'll be having a Thursday meeting, a Monday CAC, and a Tuesday meeting. So just to have that all out there. So why don't we take a straw poll and do it that way? We'll start. Who would like to see the meeting moved from the 13th Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. I see 3. Am I missing anyone? Okay. And that's only 3, so I'll assume the rest of us are to not move it.
I think there might have been 4. I think Mirabai's hand might have been hard to see.
Okay, Mirabai, Junie, Bob, and Mark. So it's super close. Let's see who would prefer to keep it. Raise your hand if you prefer to keep it. I'll assume it's everyone else. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's Adam, 5. We're just going to go with that. We're going to keep it, and we will definitely make some time to say some words about what's going on and that we thought about moving it because of the reason that the All-Star game got moved to Colorado. All right, everyone, thanks for that conversation. So I'm going to tee up a few more items here. So one of the conversations that we had this morning at CAC involved planning staff and what we're going to be able to get done this year or not. It was triggered because the use tables meeting, which was scheduled, the planning staff won't be able to be ready for that because one of the staff who was involved is no longer working for the city. And so as we talked about that, it also became clear that potentially the sub-community plan, the East Boulder sub-community plan, could also potentially move past the end of this council. And so one thing I wanted to do, and that brought up the conversation that in August, we're scheduled to have a midterm check-in for the year to see how we're doing for our work plan. And so part of the conversation was, I was hopeful we'd have that earlier than August so that we could definitely review and touch on all of these items. So I wanted to flag those as concerns. Personally, I'm hopeful that we will do what we can to get those handled in this council. But if we need to have one move off into a future council of items that are on our work plan, I think we want to be talking about it sooner than later. And so, Nuria, I don't know if you have news on that. Okay, so why don't I turn to Nuria and see what staff conversation was after CAC?
We are, so I appreciate that, Sam, and we did talk about it briefly. We are going to move that up to talk about. We think it's an appropriate moment. I think I'm just waiting for confirmation on the date, but we can certainly be flexible as we can move it up there. We knew that the July 20th meeting was available, and we were actually thinking of another date in mind. So we will confirm that, but certainly we'll be moving that up.
Super. And I just suggest that if we do move something off of July 13th, that might be a time to have the work plan discussion. So anyway, I wanted to flag that to council. If you have feedback tonight, we'll be happy to take it, but just be aware that we need to check in. And with that said, I wanted to bring up one other item. I'll probably turn to Rachel to lay it out in more detail. But there are likely to be some measures passed at the State House, which may then result in us wanting to do a few things. And I'll turn to Rachel. And Rachel, you suggested this to me, so why don't you talk about it?
All right. Well, I think it was mentioned earlier in Christina Gardner's speech that we are expecting that the state legislature will pass 3 gun bills this week, and hopefully they will be signed into law by Governor Polis. One of them repeals preemption. And preemption is the state law that resulted in our assault weapons ban getting struck down. So if and when preemption is repealed, we may want to reinstate our assault weapons ban. I would maybe turn to Tom or Sandra on whether that's necessary. But additionally, depending on how that final law comes out, there may be other things that we would want to look at that we weren't able to look at before. And again, since I don't know the final language yet, I won't opine on what those might be. But I thought it might be one of those situations where, we build in a little bit of wiggle room for changing circumstances into our work plan. And we certainly didn't expect to have the tragedy that we did this year, nor for us to have preemption lifted and the ability to look at some new gun laws. And so I thought that maybe in the kind of the lull before a new council gets here, like that sort of September, October, November period with this council that worked, a lot of you so hard on the assault weapons ban initially, And then all of us who have been so profoundly impacted by the tragedy could use that time to add to our work plan. And one more question for Tom before you answer. I think it would largely fall on the city attorney's office in terms of who would pick up extra work. And my hope is that maybe somebody like the Giffords legal team might help us draft legislation or the ordinance. That's my pitch.
Thanks, Rachel. Tom or Sandra, what are your thoughts on the repeal of preemption? Do we need to reinstate our assault weapons ban? And how much work would it be to do so and maybe add a few other items?
Well, I'll answer the first question and defer to Sandra on the second. You don't need to do anything. I want to consult with our outside legal team from Arnold and Porter, but I would suggest that what we'll do is move to the Supreme Court for immediate remand to the district court to dismiss the case, which would automatically reinstate our ban. So you wouldn't need to do anything. In terms of staffing, we're, as you know, going through a transition, and Sandra's working very hard on that. And I'm not sure how much capacity the city attorney's office is going to have in the next couple of months to take on new projects.
Very good. And
wait, is Tom, Sandra, sorry, just real quick, is that something though that it seemed like Giffords was interested in helping us to come up with ordinance language as needed? So is that something that we could sort of outsource?
Giffords in every town. We have some great partners in this effort, and so we can do that. If it's just limited to gun things, I think we could probably handle something. But I'm not sure what other things you were thinking of in terms of implementing new laws in September, October. And I love, Rachel, I'm not familiar with this concept of a lull on city council. It's not happened in my 10 years, but if it happens, it would be nice.
Well, it's sort of a political lull where, you don't want to, ideally tackle things that right before an election, the equivalent of appointing a Supreme Court justice when there's about to be an election. So that kind of a lull, a political lull, especially where we could, do something that is not politically controversial, because I think it would be not wholly, but largely supported by the community.
I guess I'll just reiterate that the city attorney's office is going through a pretty major transition right now. And so I'm just very cognizant of the workload that our attorneys have. And to the extent that we can work with the Giffords group, that would be wonderful. If they can take on that work for us, and if it's limited to that, we can certainly look into that. So I'm happy to keep the conversation going. And I think it really does determine, it's based on timing though too. I just don't know. We have a lot of other work with the Hill and some other things going on. So I do think this is an important issue, and to the extent that we can work with that outside counsel, we can look into that.
Super. So here's my suggestion for this. It sounds like the work plan review will be moved up. So July 13th seems like a pretty good candidate date. So Sandra, if you'd be able to think about what kind of capacity you might have for a conversation that we'd have on the 13th, we'll also know more about what passed as far as the preemption repeal. So maybe there will be more concrete questions about schedule at that time. So with all that, Council, I just wanted to make you aware of all those scheduling items. And if we do move the work plan discussion up to July 13th, be thinking about priorities, specifically what we need to get done in this council. And if we had to push something off to the beginning of the next council, what that would be, what we'd prefer. And then also be thinking about gun violence prevention measures, and we can hear from the city attorney's office on July 13th about capacity, and then discuss that further then. So that covers everything that I wanted to bring forward about scheduling. I do have one more item to touch on, but is there anything else in that cluster of subjects staff or council would like to weigh in on? Okay, great. Seeing none. Well, I saw a hand, then it disappeared. Mary, do you have anything? No?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
just a quick comment that a couple of weeks ago, I sent out a hotline about the nuisance noise ordinance, and there's another discussion regarding another method that can be used to address noise with Chief Harold. And I had asked that perhaps she present some of this information she's shared with me. And initially, I thought it might take more time than it appears that it will take. So in short, there'll be another item that Chief Harold will present on June 22nd, but it should be covered under the time that is already scheduled for that meeting.
Super. And the 22nd you're referring to is the police department master plan update and crime update as well. So, okay, super. Thanks for that. Okay, and the last subject Bob reminded me about today, when we heard from the engagement subcommittee, one of the points we touched on was coming back to in-person meetings, and we resolved that, and we said that we're going to do in-person council meetings when we return from our break. What I do not believe we resolved is study sessions. And so what had been put out there was, how do we want to handle our study sessions after we return from our break? And so I thought we would have a little time, and we do, to have a little discussion here of that, because I think for our purposes and staff purposes, we need to put a bow on that and make sure that we have a plan for how we're going to do study sessions. And the engagement subcommittee had given us some ideas and choices. Before I go on, Adam, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just thought we had had a conversation that we decided on leaving it as is for study sessions, but we're doing virtual ones. At least that's my recollection, but I could be wrong.
I do think we talked about that. I didn't come away with the decision necessarily that we had, and Bob hadn't been clear. Maybe, Bob, I'm misrepresenting you, but I know that some of the ideas we had talked about included meeting in person, but having some people be able to telecon in. So definitely we're talking about different. I'm happy however we choose to. I just want to make sure that I understood what council's direction was. Bob, and then Mirabai.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I like Sam, I'm happy to do whatever council wishes. It just, Rachel and I, when we kind of compared notes after that meeting, we're a little unclear about whether a decision had been made. We had made a recommendation, but it wasn't a strong recommendation, that we go to in-person study sessions as well, but give council members the options to participate remotely. But then there was some discussion about keeping it all remote for now. We just wanted to kind of bottom that out for the benefit of staff and just be really clear about our decision. We actually have an engagement committee meeting tomorrow. So we wanted to ask the question tonight, and if it's the will of council to have all study sessions for the foreseeable future virtually, that's fine. If council members want to go back in some sort of hybrid, that's fine too. We just wanted to let staff know so they can plan.
Thanks, Bob. Mirabai, and then Rachel. Mirabai.
I was just going to say that my recollection was the same as Adam, that study sessions were going to be remote and meetings were going to be in person.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
That meeting went so late that night, my recollection is pretty fuzzy as well. It seemed to me that what the engagement subcommittee was sort of honing in on was that we would come back for council meetings, which with study sessions and regular voting meetings, but that we would not come back for things like CAC and subcommittee meetings. So that I think hopefully we're all clear on that, and that we really wanted to build in a remote option for people, and wanted to work through that we not all try and be remote on the same day, and that we had a physical presence of a quorum there, and maybe work on a sign up type option for like who could be off on the July 13th meeting or that kind of thing. And that's the worst. That's not a study session. We've established that one. Anyhow, and so maybe what happened was that we haven't established the protocols yet for how to like sign up for who's going to be there. And so maybe it was staff wanting to delay a little bit on coming back for study sessions while we figured out how to ensure that not everybody's taking the same day off. But that's a hypothesis, but I do support going back for both and making sure that we build in the options, because it will free us up. I think for people that are going on business trips and things like that, if they can schedule those around study sessions and be able to be remote for foreseeable future will be helpful.
Thank you, Rachel. I've got Aaron, Junie, and Mary. Aaron.
Yeah, I would go ahead and keep study sessions virtual for at least a couple months, just as a way of easing back into the in-person. I don't feel super strongly about it as long as there's an option for council members to be remote, but that would be my top choice, is to keep study sessions virtual for a while longer.
Super. Thank you, Aaron. Junie and then Mary. Junie?
Yeah, I think somehow some of us heard differently during the meeting, and I think we did agree that study sessions would be remote. And I do support that as well, to keep it virtual for now, for the foreseeable future. But I think that was a decision and I agree with it, to stay virtual.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, that was my recollection as well, that we did decide that study sessions would remain remote for a while.
All right. I think that's clear enough. So I think Bob and Rachel and Nuria, it's clear that council would like to, for the foreseeable future, keep all study sessions virtual, and we will have all council meetings in person. So I think that is all that I had for this matters item. Is there anything else any other council member would like to bring up? If that's the case, I think we're going to adjourn this meeting. We're going to adjourn this meeting at 8:26 p.m. So congratulations to everyone, and let's enjoy the time we have for the rest of the evening. And we'll see you all soon, and thanks for a great meeting. Mark, did you have something before we go?
So I was just wondering if under our charter, we're permitted to end the meeting before 8:30. This is unprecedented.
It is.
I'll take it though. I'll take it.
All right, very good. Everyone enjoy the rest of your evening. This meeting is adjourned at 8:27 p.m. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.